Hello and welcome to another episode of Lizzie Watches Yaoi. And today I'm talking about something that's a little bit different from the rest of the things I'm talking about, a little bit more along the lines of Kazutakina no Uta. Today I'm discussing Natsu no Tobira, which is The Door into Summer, that came out in 1981. Now, this is considered like part of the Shonenai collection because it does have a queer character and a Shonenai element, but the main storyline about this is not Shonenai. It's a straight romance. It just so happens to be that there is a queer romance kind of in there as well, but the main storyline focuses on the heterosexual relationships and not relationships between this group of boys. But it always makes the list because it does have a queer character, and it doesn't like a negative thing. It just shows it as a tragic thing, as it does with pretty much every relationship in this. This is a beautiful tragedy. I mean, the art style is gorgeous. It's that period of shoujo manga and anime that just had those beautiful feminine designs and the big sparkly eyes, and oh, it's lovely. And all the stills of the art in this are just gorgeous to look at. It's just beautiful. But alas, it is a slightly different kind of storyline because the main focus is on a straight relationship, if not a slightly kind of awkward, slightly more taboo relationship than the usual love stories. But it opens and you see this beautiful boy and he's running, and the voiceover is going, "Why do you run?" And we find out this beautiful boy is called Marion. And it's, why do you run? Something that is broken cannot be fixed. Water that is spilt cannot be unspilt. And it kind of like does this continuous like monologuing over this. It's like, why, Marion? Why do you run? Why? There's nothing you can do now. You are too late. Like, you cannot escape your fate. You've already like made your choices in life. Meanwhile, you see two boys standing in a poppy field, and it's beautifully animated, and you see the poppies like floating, and the two boys are standing there holding pistols back to back, and we know that there's a duel going on. And it's starting to rain, and the boys are saying, okay, right, so we agree, we turn on 20, we shoot for the heart, like, we will settle this. And then you hear Marion coming up close and going, stop, stop. So he's desperately running through the storm, try and get to them to stop this duel. And you see him, and just as he arrives, you hear the gunshots go off, and then you hear his voice coming over going, let's go back to the beginning of summer. So we find out the events that happened over summer that led to this like battle, well, this duel in the stormy poppy field. And it starts off with Marion's reading a letter. It turns out it's a letter from his mum, and his mum has got a new husband and is spending lots of time with him, and he's really like nonchalant about this letter. He's just like, oh, it's just words, he don't care. He rips it out, throws it out the window. He doesn't like getting like letters from his mother, and he's become a very cold and distant person. He doesn't believe in relationships. He doesn't believe in love in any form or shape, familiar love, romantic love, like none of this. Like, he is cold and distant, and he doesn't want people near him, and he's purposely trying to keep them at arm's length. He's even the president of the Rational Party, and he believes to act rationally. So you act without using your emotions, and you every situation it should be rationally like solved without being emotionally invested or really getting physically involved. So as the story like goes, we get introduced to our main players. So we've got Lind, who is like kind of the cool, handsome one. You get Claude, who is the slightly more gentile, naive, like sweet one. You get Jack, who's the country boy. He's kind of loud and like friendly and energetic. And the four of them are like on dorm duty, and they are responsible for the school, and they're kind of like the student council of like this posh looking French school. And they're hanging out one day in town talking about how society has all these rules, and because of that they have to stay in their school uniforms while everyone else is broken up for summer holidays. And then there's a fight going on between two seniors, and they're basically got into a punch up because we meet our next player, Ladonia. And Ladonia is absolutely beautiful. She's this stunning girl, and obviously all the boys are in love with her. And this fight is basically because both of these two boys propose to her, and they're fighting over her. And Ladonia is just like, she's not interested in either of them. But the two boys are smashing up the cafe that our main cast like to hang out in. So Marion decides to throw a pail of water over them, and he's kind of completely ignoring Ladania, who's staring at him beautifully, and everyone's whispering like, "Look, look, look!" He's giving her the cold shoulder, and Ladania is completely besotted by Marion. You can tell by just the way that she completely just stares at him with all the sparkle, sparkle eyes and the music. So Marion manages to stop the fight, and then he very rationally and calmly starts going, right, this is all the property damage, like you've done, kind of putting them in their place and going, here's the bill for everything you broke. And one of the boys is like, I am not taking this seriously, and punches him in the face. So Marion says it's a duel, and everyone can come and watch, as he challenges this other boy to a duel. And the duel is basically a game of chicken with this train. So they both the boys stand on the train track, everyone looking on. Like, poor Ladonia looks like she's about to pass out because she's so worried about Marion. Train gets closer and closer and closer. Obviously, the boy jumps out of the way, and at the very last minute, you hear the train like squealing to a halt. Then you see Marion lying on the grass, and he gets up, and he's like, "Oh, that's a new record! I managed to stop the train." Everyone cheers. Marion's the best. Everyone's happy. Ladania is pretty much like passed out on the ground, and Claude is looking at her suspiciously out of concern. Maybe he also has feelings for her, but it turns out that like Lind also has feelings for Ladania because he's been carving her name in all the trees around, and Jax also likes her because he's like, oh, don't worry, I'm going to win her over. Like, it's like, so our main core group of boys, all of them, all four of them, all have feelings for Ladania. But as everyone's walking off, this mysterious and beautiful woman steps off the train and goes, "Marion, is it?" And Marion's like, "Yeah." And he's like, because obviously she's overheard everyone shouting, "Yay, Marion!" And she's like, "Oh, thank you for like getting the train to stop here. My mansion's much closer. I'm going to go walk over it." And Marion looks at her and she's this gorgeous older woman. And she's like, "Oh, thank you for that." And before he can really realise what she's going, she's given him a thank you kiss. And Marion looks thoroughly, like, shocked and upset and like, "Oh my God, what just happened to me?" And the beautiful woman introduces her name as Sarah Vida. And she gets off and then she wanders back to her mansion, wherever it is, in conjunction to the train. Meanwhile, back in the boys' dorm, it's another day and it's pouring of rain, and Marion's ripped up another letter and thrown it out the window, and like the boys are like chatting and stuff, and there's a poster on the wall. Well, a poster. They don't have posters back in this century, but never mind. There's a picture on the wall of a swan and a beautiful woman, and it's the myth of Leda. Leda was this gorgeous woman, and Zeus saw her and thought, "My God, she's gorgeous." Turns into a swan, and they become lovers for a time. And the boys are like chatting about how like, so wait a minute, did Leda like have sex with a swan? And it's like, well, she bore 2 eggs. Meanwhile, like Marion's just like, "Oh, we shouldn't be discussing this. I hate this. I'm going off." Because the boys start talking about like, well, you know, sometimes like you can have sex and you don't have to be in love to have sex. Like, love and sex are not mutually exclusive is basically how the conversation's going. It's just like a thing that men and women do. And they're asking, because it's Claude's picture, and they're asking Claude, "Why do you have this picture up?" He goes, "Oh, I wish I could become the swan." And they're like, "Oh yes, well, maybe you can. Maybe it's not like too late to like, try and change so that like you can also woo Ladania," because that's all the boys just think, are all just like, we'll find a way somehow, even though she's in love with like Marion. Well, Marion just like storms out going, "This conversation is horrible." And the boys are like, "Just let him go. He's always been uncomfortable around this stuff. He doesn't like romance. It's the one thing that makes him like naive. He's so like mature and confident in everything, but he hates like talking about sex and women and relationships." You then find out that you hear Marion's monologue, and the letter wasn't from his mum. It's from Ladania, and Ladania saying that even if it's raining, I'll be in the cafe waiting for you. I will always wait for you. I'll wait for your reply. And it's like, oh, he's ripped up a letter for Ladania. So he runs off and he decides he will go to the cafe. And you see a shot through the window, and they're chatting about something, and then Ladania slaps him. Marion's just like, "Oh, it's filthy. Don't send me letters like that. I don't like it. It's wrong," and runs off through the rain. And it turns out that, like, yeah, this romantic letter that she wrote him, he's all like, "Nope, nope, rejecting it. I don't like love. I don't like people. I don't like contact and emotions." And it's all just like filthy, and it messes with my head. And it's like, what the hell happened in this past life that made him like this? That's the one sad thing about this series. You don't find what happened to him that made him so like resistant to like attention and love. It's kind of implied that because his parents got divorced and his mum is now with a new man and is always with him, doesn't spend enough time with Marion, that Marion's built up this complex of like, fine, you don't need me, I don't need you. I don't like you very much anymore, and certainly don't like this new father, stepfather figure, and so he's shut himself off at all things like romantic and sexual and relationship wise. So he runs off into the storm, and he's pissing it down on him, and he passes out. And the next thing we see is he wakes up and he's totally naked in an unknown bed, and he's just kind of going, what's going on? And then Sarah's there. And Sarah decides to clean him up. And obviously, she decides with the most important thing, she's going to dry him off. And so first, she starts rubbing over his bum and then starts drying off his legs. And obviously, our innocent and hating of all physical contact and emotional, behaviour just hates it. Marion is just like, no, don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me. And he's just like, he just loses it. And she's like, look, I'm just drying you down. What's the matter with rescuing a kitten from the rain and towel drying it? Like, you could catch pneumonia if I don't, dry you. And he's like, this is my body. You have no right to touch it. You cannot get close to me physically or emotionally. I will not mentally let you near me. This is mine, my life, my body, my choice. And I'm like, you know what? That's a good message for life. It is, young, beautiful boy. It is your body. It is your choice. And if you don't want some older woman, drying your bum and your legs off while you're naked, I think that's fair enough. Sarah's a little bit predatory here, and good lessons to take away. But then Sarah tells him it's like, your life is not just yours. Like, you can't just shout around saying that you hate all connections, and because basically he takes it a step further by going I'm just me, it's just my life. I do not have relationships, I do not need people near me. And she's like, your life is not your own. Your body is not your own. It belongs to your family. It belongs to your friends. It belongs to the people, who love you. You share your life. You cannot shut yourself off from everything because you've already made connections in life. And you can't reject all forms of love because your parents love you and your friends love you. And one day, your lover will love you, like this Ladonia. And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, look, you called out her name in your sleep while you were unconscious. And it turns out that Marion does love Ladonia. Unfortunately, he is so stilted by his absolute fear of relationships, of physical contact, of being near people, and he has this underlying absolute hatred of women because of how much he hates his mother for getting remarried, that he can't express his feelings for Ladonia, and he's been rejecting her because he just doesn't know how to hold her. And Sarah's like, look, women are not terrifying monsters. They're not scary. Love and being emotionally vulnerable is not something to be feared. Sex is not something to be feared. A woman's body is not a terrifying thing. And she decides to start stripping. Well, first she goes, look, a kiss is a kiss. It is something given, and if you want more, you can take. She's like, I will give you a kiss, and if you like it, you can take some more. And so she kind of seduces him, and yeah, then she strips, and then she now we will lay naked. Do you see how warm and calm this is? You don't need to do anything more than this. If you want more, take more. But for now, feel how nice and warm and calming this all is. And Marion goes, you know what? Yeah, this is nice. And so they lie naked for a bit, and then they decide, yes, actually, sex is good. And they have a lovely time. It's all drawn very beautifully, very romantically, beautiful stills going on. And that, Sarah acts more like the teacher teaching, Marion how to reciprocate, how to not be scared of things, how to enjoy himself. And this leads to their summer fling. And so they go from strangers to lovers, and they share a bed, they go on picnics, they go horse riding, Marion's confidence blossoms, and it's all about how he went from a boy to a man as this affair unfolds over the beautiful summer, and they're having a lovely time. Back in the dorm, it turns out that Marion's been gone for a week, and Claude is freaking out about this. He's like, why would he not return to the door? Why is he gone? I don't get it. I don't get it. And they're like, look, it's fine. I'm sure he'll come back soon. And he's like, I don't get it. I don't get it. And he's looking out the window, and he's thinking about Marion and where he is, and he sees a reflection of Marion, and then the reflection disappears, and then he turns to the window and gives it a kiss, and it's like, oh, it's revealed that Claude has never been in love with Ladonia. Claude is worried because Marion's disappeared because he is in love with Marion. And this is where our Shun and I element comes from in the character of Claude, who realizes through this catalyst of like events that his feelings are for like Marion, and he's been in love with him the whole time, and now he's super worried that he's like can't find the guy he loves. So Linda and Jack decide to kind of like go for a walk and a coffee, and they know exactly where Marion is. They know that Marion has been spending the week at this like rich woman's house, and that she's the mistress of a famous count. And they're like, look, like just let like Marion have his fun. The count will come back at some point, and that will be like the end of it. But like, you know, Marion's not doing any harm, and you know it's the woman, and she's like, you know, he's become a man now and stuff. It's like, but if the school finds out, he might get expelled, which is obviously not a great thing. So they decide, you know what, we should probably go over and check out like what's up, and maybe convince that like Marion that he should kind of come back for the rest of the summer, so that the school doesn't think that he's just living in this woman's mansion, which you know is fair enough. So they go to get Marion back, and when they see Sarah, they're all like, oh, damn, this older woman is gorgeous, and all our confidence is gone. But Marion is absolutely, like, confident. He comes out of the shower, he's all piping hot, and it's all, like, this metaphor for, like, this cold persona he had and his frozen heart. He's now melted. He has now learnt to love. He has learnt to be expressive. He has learnt happiness, joy of physical contact, to be not afraid of women or their bodies, and he's just totally fallen in love with Sarah, and he is happy as pie. But he appreciates the fact that he probably should return to school to not like get people into trouble. So he goes, okay, it's about time I return to my own world, and like, you know, bring this new me to it. So he goes back to the dorms, and obviously everyone's found out about him and his affair. But he doesn't care. He's happy, and he's like, I don't regret any of it. I learnt to love, and I love her. And, you know, it's changed me into a better person. His friends are like, well, this new kind of relaxed, loving Marion, is he like strong enough to be like the president of our society? And they're like, well, you know, maybe, maybe not. Maybe being in love is not like a detrimental thing, and you know, a young boy coming into his own over summer and having his first sexual awakening is not something we should like, you know, be a downer on. But Claude is just like, nope, I will never accept it. I will always reject this. I hate you, Marion. And like he runs off, and it's like, well, what's up with Claude? Marion doesn't get it. But like, so we cut to some more scenes, and it turns out that like, you know, Marion and Sarah are still seeing each other, but now in the open. So they've gone to the cafe, and he's kissing Sarah goodbye, and his mates are just like, oh, I don't know, that's such a good idea in front of everybody, and everyone's obviously whispering about it. Adonia can see it, and she's not exactly best pleased, and the two mates, who obviously both in love with Ladonia, are just like, oh my god, we can't bear to see her like this. It's just like, it's heartbreaking. So they leave, and like, Marion's like, oh, where did they go? Then he sees Ladonia. Ladonia completely blanks him and wanders off, and he's a bit like, wait a minute, I seem to have lost all my friends. He's like, he's gained this lover and all this experience, and he's happy, but he suddenly realised that Ladonia is now completely ignoring him. Claude has run off and is completely ignoring him. His two other friends have now just disappeared. So Jacques and Lind like have gone, and he's like, where is everybody? Feeling a little bit like lonely. And he hasn't realised that this affair that's been his awakening has set in motion a load of other like events, because now that he's with Sarah and Ladonia is rejecting him, Lind sees this as the time that he can finally like, you know, pursue Ladonia himself, because his biggest rival is gone. Claude doesn't seem that interested in Ladonia anymore. He's too busy running off being stressed out about Marion. And Lind also just thinks that, like, you know, his sophisticated self is better than the country bumpkin that is Jack's. So he starts putting a plan in motion to win Ladonia, and he starts noting the date on which the Count is going to come back to his mistress. And he's like, okay, their affair is going to have to end when the Count comes back for Sarah, because, you know, he doesn't want to know that, like, his mistress has been having an affair with another guy. It's just like, you know. So he puts his plan into motion, and the Count comes back to the station one day, and Lind goes up to him and goes, I have to tell you something about a friend of mine and, like, your mistress. And the Count is like, what? And grabs him and takes him to the house and makes him say it in front of, like, Sarah. So Linda's all like, well, it turns out that your mistress here, Sarah, seduced my friend. They've been having an affair over the summer. And the Count goes, Sarah, is this true? And she goes, yes, I found him in the rain and he was cold and, like, and starved of emotion and touch. And so I looked after him. And the Count was like, I see you shared some of your kindness with him. And Linda's like, no, it wasn't like that. She seduced him. She seduced him. Making very much a point that it's a sexual relationship. And so he goes, so you shared some of, like, who you are with him and some of your, like, self with him. And she's like, yes, I did that. And he's like, oh, that's so very much like you to look after another being. And he's completely nonplussed by this affair. He just knows that Sarah found a boy that needed some loving, gave him some loving, but that doesn't threaten his position. So the Count just goes back with Sarah and goes, oh, that was very kind of you. And she's like, I know, thanks for that. And, they are totally happy with this. Lind, on the other hand, is not happy by the revelation. It shatters his plan because he's like, wait a minute, I thought that this was going to, like, upset him. I thought this was going to, like, ruin the relationship and get Marion in trouble, but it's done nothing. Meanwhile, Marion is getting ready for horse riding, and he's going, oh, what happens if I just turn up on a horse to, like, Sarah, not realising the Count is there. Sarah has said that, like, oh, it's a shame that I won't see Marion again. The affair has to over. It was lovely while it lasted. I'm sure he'll do fine without me, because she's back with the Count and she's happy. They're like, summer tryst is over. She feels like she's helped him on his way, but, like, and she did love him in her own way, but it's the Count who she's with. So Marion, all excited to go visit her, is in the stables, and he sees Claude, and Claude is absolutely broken up, upset, and Marion's like, what's up? What's going on? And Claude is just looking despondent, and then Marion sees that Claude has been taking some pills, and it looks like he was about to commit suicide. And he's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And Claude is just like, I'm so sorry, Marion. I've been possessed by the devil. The devil has made me do this. All this time, I've been pretending to be in love with Ladonia, but I've been in love with you, and I can't help it anymore. And he kind of throws himself at Marion and kisses him. And Marion is very shocked. And Claude is like, just forgive me. I'm in love with you, and I can't do anything about it, and I don't know what is consuming me. Please help me. Please help me. And he's all worked up and high on drugs, and he starts ripping, like, Marion's shirt, and it looks like he's going to, like, sexually, like, abuse him or something. But all the time he's screaming about being possessed and not knowing what to do, and he just wants help. He just wants to understand these feelings and what to do with them and why he feels this way for Marion. And he just wants to be close to Marion. But Marion totally freaks out, picks up the riding crop, smacks, like, Claude across the head, like, causing him to, like, bleed everywhere. And he's just, like, screams no at him, totally rejecting him, his advances, offering of help. And Claude is just like, oh my God, and runs off. And you're like, oh dear, this is not going to end well. And as it happens, it doesn't end well for poor Claude after expressing his feelings and his guilt and his, like, confusion and just needing help. He has slit his wrist and thrown himself into the river, and he's committed suicide, and they find his body in the river, and it's all really tragic. And Marion is really upset by this because he's like, you didn't have to die, you didn't have to die. And then Marion realizes his own guilt. He's like, oh my God, I should have held you. I should have looked after you. The way that Sarah comforted me and showed that everything was going to be okay, and that, like, it's all right to love and to have feelings and emotions. It's like, I should have just comforted him. I should have looked after him. I should have helped him. But instead I rejected him, and he just keeps playing the scene over and over again of his rejection. And he's like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I can't. Oh no, it's awful. And he's like, I just need Sarah to hold me now, because I've just, like, caused this death of this poor boy that was a good friend, when I should have just said that, I loved him and I cared for him, and I should have hugged him and said it was going to be okay, and I could have helped him. So he runs off to go and see Sarah. Meanwhile, poor Ladonia is just like, oh God, like, a friend is dead, like, I still love Marion, but he's all heartbroken, I should go and help him. And Linda's like, no, don't leave him be, like, he's too lost now to us. He's going back to his lover. And she's like, oh, Lind. And just before she throws herself into Lind's arms, seeking some comfort, Jax punches Lind into the river and going, don't you dare make a move on her. I know what your plan is. I know that you've been setting this all up so you could be the one that comforts Ladonia and then you can propose to her, but she is not just like a pretty accessory for you to wear on your arm. I know that you like told the Count so that you could get Marion into trouble, and obviously Ladonia is very upset with this. She's like, oh god, like what? Um, she was played, and Linda's like, oh, so what? Like, I couldn't help it. And Jax just tells him that he's a despicable person and that he proposes to Ladonia and goes, why don't you marry me, Ladonia? And Linda's like, don't you dare. And they're having an argument there. Meanwhile, like, Marion has turned up at Sarah's house, is greeted by the Count, and he's like, oh God, yes, I knew this day would come. Our affair couldn't last forever. I have no idea who to turn to. And then suddenly Ladonia appears, going, please, please, you need to come back, Marion. You're the only one that can stop them. And it turns out that, obviously, we're back to the beginning, that Jack and Lynn's kind of like bickering, what started off as like friendship and a little bit of rivalry and teasing, has now got also twisted up in all of these complications. And they've basically like decided to go for a duel because of all these bubbling feelings and hatred, and they're like, fine, we're going to go for a duel and like, winner takes all and stuff. So Marion's like, oh no, oh my god, I can't believe that like all my actions have caused my two best friends to want to shoot each other. So he starts running. And this is where you get the beginning scene of him running towards them. Sarah praises Ladonia for being like brave, for going after what she wanted, for standing up for herself, and for like, going after like the person that she does care about and trying to keep everyone safe. And says like, you keep being honest with your feelings and you'll find the happiness that you're looking for. The two boys, Jack and Lynn, turn round to shoot each other. Obviously, we see that Marion gets there just in time, throwing himself between them, but unfortunately, he is shot. Now, at this point, you're like, oh dear, of course he was going to die. Absolute tragedy, because that's what these series are like. We are lucky, though, because he doesn't actually die. It still all ends tragically. Like, Marion just can't understand that how, like, his, like, awakenings and his path of healings and kind of led to the destruction of absolutely everybody around him, and probably feels that like you might have been better off like having not survived it. But as it ends, we see that everyone has now gone their separate ways, and there's all this voiceover about like the summer of youth ended, and instead of like blossoming like a flower, it was snuffed out, and it is now autumn and things have died out. There's lots of beautiful poetry, and there's some French going on as well about like the nature of emotions and feelings, and like that was a tragic like step into manhood rather than like a beautiful one of like four friends becoming like men and their friendship continuing, but their friendship is totally decimated. Lind has gone to a school in Paris. Ladonia is just like upset and heartbroken and shut in. Jacques is still waiting for a reply to the proposal, but sits by himself in the dorm room. And Marion has gone back to his mother to be looked after as he heals from his shot wounds. And it's all just very sad and tragic, and nobody found any happiness. And yeah, a very downer ending, but it's a beautiful film, despite the fact that its central focus is the heterosexual relationship. That even though it's still taboo, it's still like a straight romance and something that says it's shot and eye, and the shot and eye element is very small, but it's worth seeing for the style, the artwork, and that kind of storytelling where you could have queer characters and it be part of the storyline, and you can have queer character and see their journey and see like the guilt over rejection and not like helping them through something they're going through, and it kind of wraps itself in all of this beautiful like tales of coming of age, of summer to autumn, to like just like the destruction of friendship, and how like gaining happiness just for yourself without seeing the fallout of your actions on other people, and like yeah, that's the core strength of a group, and how it can be completely ruined because you keep all these elements to yourself, and because you go after things you want without a care for other people's like feelings. It is very tragic. It's beautiful and tragic and worth watching. It's just, yeah, it's just a little bit sad, and it's not full on Yaoi, Sean, and I, but it's still worth checking out. So for now, it's me saying byesy byes.